Hi everyone, and welcome to the Hands on CISO podcast. My name is Adi, and today we'll be talking to Jose Alvarado. If I'm pronouncing that right? Jose
Yeah.
is currently the Director of Information Security at Stax Payment after being in IT for over a decade. Today we'll talk about the changing field of cybersecurity and about Jose's journey. How are you today?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I'm really excited for this conversation. I think, especially in your case, you have a exceptionally interesting story of like how you got started. So, like, tell us.
Yeah. So kind of really way back, right? In high school, I think my journey really started there. Didn't really do well in the public schools and things like that. Never really enjoyed K through 12. I mean, well, whatever. Yeah, K through 12. And getting out of there, I worked at a warehouse for about 5 years. And during that time, I just didn't like carrying boxes. So started looking at schools and who would take me and what type of journey that would be. I found DeVry. DeVry had software and web development, and then they had networking, right? Which at the time I had no idea what it was. I didn't want to do web development because at the time I hated math, wanted to avoid it. Uh, so they told me subnetting is the only math you'll need. I don't know what that was at the time, so I was like, okay, let's just do it. So took a dive in there, and their curriculum was really focused on Cisco. Got introduced to Cisco's routing and switching, and really my journey started there. Started learning how the internet really communicates. That's really what the basis of that degree was, and then specifically get the training on Cisco technologies. When I graduated my associate's degree, I left there and I took the first job that could take me, a really small MSP, managed service provider, and they had like 5 customers, right? And it was a terrible work experience, but it was awesome because I was able to finally work on computers, and I jumped into firewall troubleshooting, DHCP, Active Directory. I was just kind of immediately thrown in that space. I was a help desk. I was hired as a help desk technician, and then immediately was they kind of were encouraging me to go on site because I was really good at critical thinking. Now I know what it was. It's critical thinking, troubleshooting, uh, point A to point B. How is it communicating, and what the problem is between the two locations. So either it's internet or internal file server, etc. Um, Worked on all that stuff, and that's pretty much how I got there. It's a good quick summary.
So now you're doing a job that's really based in security. And before that, you were doing more IT. So security was sort of baked into it, but it wasn't your main focus. How do you
Yeah,
see the
it's
difference?
yeah, and so the so when my title really started becoming in security, uh, things started changing. Started getting more on the business side, and I really realized I was in security until like later in my career. Firewalls were for me. I didn't know the difference between a router and a firewall. Right? I thought they were just. I was really green. Funny. It's funny to say it now, but it was really green. I thought that a firewall is a router, and a router is a firewall with just security features in it. And more enhanced features are different ranges of firewalls. And so I started working on my first network was sonic walls, firewalls, and some. I don't even think it was Cisco Catalyst. I think it was just Netgear switches. And in that space, while I was kind of working my way up, uh, every organization I deployed a email spam filter. I deployed uh, phishing training, phishing campaigns. I deployed uh, endpoint protection, malware protection, um, image backups, file level backups, all the encrypting the backups, all these things that really are in the security space now in 2024, but back in 2013, they were all just bundled together. It's like everything. And do you want more security or less security? But there wasn't a uh, you only work on computers, but you don't harden endpoint. It was always part of. I had a checklist or procedures list where when I deploy a computer, make sure that malware protection's on, encryption's on, et cetera, et cetera. And those were security requirements that weren't done by a director of security. They were done by an IT manager, right?
Amazing. What does your day-to-day look like currently?
So currently my day-to-day is team meeting every day with the security team. Then really it's just diving into tickets. And the tickets for myself is really project-based. So it's either projects, because I'm really focused on compliance right now, my current role. So I dive into reviewing projects that impact compliance. Either it's enhancing security or changing a security control, or my projects for changing up policies, updating them, etc. And that's pretty much. And then obviously, and then of course the numerous meetings that we have. So, which is pretty common in the security space. And my meetings skyrocketed definitely when it comes to really focusing on the security side, because consequently you're now in the business end, and from a security perspective, you're impacting more departments at different levels. In the IT space, it's between one service or application or system or the other, but there isn't a lot of dealing with a lot of different department heads, because this isn't like a global policy. You don't really you update one application, it's likely to affect one or two departments in the workflows. But in security, it's like impacting everyone. In most cases, it's for a compliance reason or a legal reason. So everyone starts getting involved. You have numerous meetings, etc. So that's pretty much, I think, team meeting, communication, heavy meetings, and then tickets, which is just keeping track of my projects.
Amazing. Could you dive a bit deeper into how business plays into security and vice versa?
Yeah. So I wasn't used to the when I was first brought into security, I wasn't expecting to be included in the business side of things, or I didn't realize how much of an influence it was. Where in the IT space, the department heads drive the product for you or the solution. It's likely you already have sponsors when you're trying to upgrade something, because it's improving somebody's day, always. In security, that's not always the case. There's times where I have to go into a meeting or bring up a topic for numerous department heads and ask questions, and then say, hey, we're no longer going to do this. And it's because of these reasons. You have to kind of figure out how to explain it without going too technical or anything like that. And really, majority of the time, you have to convince people. And you don't really have sponsors. You have to acquire sponsors now. You have to get a lot of people to be on your side. In the IT space, you just tell the accounting team wants a new software for accounting. And you say, okay, cool, I'll put that together. And then they help you drive the product. Security, you got to do all that.
Interesting. I didn't think about it like that. You're saying in IT, you're always helping someone specific, like someone is getting help. But in security, you're helping security. So sometimes it's not as convenient.
Yeah. And you have to get a lot of people on your side, right? And that's where the politics and business side comes into play. And that's where you kind of see a lot of these people in the communities and cybersecurity communities, etc. They get real upset, right? They don't understand. We need to do this, and that's just because you're having trouble acquiring people to support your venture, right? If you're getting and a lot of the times you're being the advocate for the organization as a whole, not individual departments. If sales is trying to make sales because they're trying to get bonuses. Marketing's trying to acquire more clients, so they'll send anything and everything you give them. If you share a document that's highly sensitive to marketing, they will display it if they think anyway. They wouldn't care if they think you'll get more customers, right? Because their driver is getting customers. Sales is closing customers. So if for example, um, we need a PCI documentation to confirm that we're PCI compliant. Salesperson, marketing, or business operations staff, hey, our client's demanding this. We need to give them XYZ. And from a security perspective, hey, we don't want to disclose more information that we need. What exactly are they asking for? Right? And then now it's the communication, right? It's 5 or 6 emails back and forth. But for the business side, they're like, just give me anything. And they'll go and try to find it and leak out information, right? Then you get leakage, right? And they're just trying to capture the customer. But for example, that's an example of what you'll deal with in the security side. In the IT side, it's really, I'm fixing your stuff, or I'm improving something that you're already complaining is broken. That's it. And then the business will say, okay, we need to upgrade bandwidth because our Wi-Fi is terrible. You're like, yeah, that's true. This is what we need. And you show them a $30,000 bill, and if you have enough department heads complaining about it, they will sign off on it. You do that with security. Hey, we need MFA. No one's going to support you.
Wow, that's a really interesting change in mindset. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you have to be the bad cop, like saying, we can't do this anymore? Like, you can't do that?
So I don't think so, because I don't approach the conversation that way. It's, hey, I want to improve our way that we do this. I know that what you're doing it now is extremely efficient, or you believe it's meeting our requirement. The problem is I'm concerned about this, and I'm being asked to solve this particular risk. And if instead of telling them, no, we're not doing this way, let them understand their workflow and accommodate it. And majority of the time, when it's not motivated by outside parties, which like politics come into play, I think politics come like not 5%, 10% of the time. But the other percent of the time, usually people are open to understanding, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, and this is why I don't want you to change it. And if you're able to really concisely determine, like, these are the objectives, and we won't touch this other stuff. This is the only thing that's going to change. And you build enough trust, you don't feel like a bad cop. It looks like you're really collaborating. And it sounds very like I don't want to say, it's like generic thing to say, hey, be nice to them. Everyone's people, they don't want to be interrupting their day. If you are enforcing the law approach, everyone's going to push back, and you're not going to make a lot of headway. You'll maybe knock out 1 or 2 projects a year. But if you get people around you and convinced that you're trying to enhance it while also increasing security, then they'll love you for it.
Perfect. How do you create a culture where security is even like a thought that exists?
That's a difficult one, but because culture is built on, there's so many impacts on culture, right? Depending on your organization, right? You have a 500-person organization staff. It's like significantly different to 50 people. But I boiled it down to, you have to have policies, you have to have controls, and you have to have sign off, and you have to have consequences. And the policy is really just training every month, right? Or I think I worked at the warehouse I worked for 5 years. This is my thing. They were so big on safety, OSHA, etc., right? We go 300 days with no incidences, right? Crash, someone gets hurt. We get like Popeyes for whatever a day, and everyone goes home early, etc. And they were really big on pushing everyone's is part of safety. Like, you're safe, everyone is safe. All you gotta do is worry about yourself, and as long as you're safe and everyone does that, we're all safe, right? Same thing with security, right? If you really push that narrative where you can individually impact whether we're gonna be hit with a cyber attack that affects us for 3-4 weeks, or a part of an organization that has no incidences year over year, and you can continue to get bonuses because our organization will grow. Right? You have, and people don't really understand. And I think it's difficult for end users to really understand that, because I have a personal phone, and I have a phone. For example, if I worked at a medical supply organization, I have a personal phone, and they give you a work phone. They don't see the difference, right? The behavior you have here, they will mirror it here, unless there's consequences. So if you have a laptop at home, it's personal, and my behavior is there. At work, I will do the same. It's hard for people to really differentiate that you're at work, and this technology is now, you're impacting the whole organization by your behavior here. And not many organizations, like CEOs, etc., really push that narrative that you may have a laptop at home, but when you bring it into our office and connect to our Wi-Fi, you need to now take dramatic differences in security. Don't open every email. Don't sign up your work email for stuff, etc. Don't respond to those phishing phishing text messages, because now they know that it's a valid number. Like, all these things are just like, and the organization from the top down really needs to push that.
Do you think working for a fintech company is different than working in a company where the data is maybe a little less sensitive?
Yes, because then you have more compliance, right? So the more sensitive, the more global impact your data is, the more regulations are put into it. For organizations that really don't care about data leakage, but everyone cares about operations. So, hey, we don't care if they're stealing our data. Okay, do you care if they manipulate it? Like, no, we don't. Okay, well, for example, there's a cement organization here. I live in Las Vegas, and they're all over the place here. But in order to mix the right amount of concrete, it's a calculation. It's done by a system. If someone hacks that system, they can throw off the mix, and now hundreds of thousands of dollars of a mix could be down the drain, right? People don't really view that as a possibility. So data is always important, because the data is used to operate your business. Now, if your organization is really like pen and paper and a very little data is transmitted, you really operate over your cell phone, and it's like you provide a service, then it becomes like, hey, it's not important at all. But organizations that have multiple staff and there's multiple departments communicating, it's likely that data integrity is the most important thing, and availability, right? We need to make sure everyone operates and the data isn't changed. We're confident that the data we're seeing is a real thing.
Wow, that's really interesting. So you're saying the thing is not really if the data, if someone sees it, like the biggest issue is if someone changes it within the company.
Yeah, like if you confidence in technology is a very fragile thing, where something's like a network stability up. As soon as you have a major outage, everyone's insecure. Like, are you sure it's going to work tomorrow? Are you sure? Like, dude, it's been working 99.9% of the time. We had one outage, and impact, it was a big outage, but it's like where's my remote? And they're like, oh, I'm not, are you sitting on the remote? No, stand up, right? Type of deal. Same thing with technology. You're seeing a piece of data, and you're making decisions off of a spreadsheet. Yeah, Excel. Actually, that's a good example. You have formulas in Excel spreadsheets. Somebody modifies that, and you're now, okay, well, our budget needs to be 50,000 for the year, but someone didn't do the formula correctly. It's really triple that. Your confidence in the Excel spreadsheet will severely diminish, right? Because now you're not confident in the formula they can do it. There's not enough checks and balances there. Imagine that in your whole data, all your data across multiple departments, and you're generating I don't know, $100,000-$200,000 a month, and you're really relying on that data. Could be Word documents, Excel, whatever. And if it's wrong, then you're not going to be dramatic here, but smaller organizations is pretty much bankruptcy. Big organizations like MGM Grand here at the Las Vegas, they got hacked. They were offline for about a week, right? They say $100 million loss. I think it was more, but most organizations can't operate that way with their expenditures, etc. So,
Wow, that's interesting. Have you ever been part of an organization that had a serious incident where you had to like fix stuff while everything was on fire?
yeah, I worked for an MSP, and they had a customer that it was back when was it when they locked up the files. It was crypto locker, etc. I forgot what the specific name was. It was a while ago. Uh Pretty much they locked up their data. Right, it was an organization that you just mentioned, specific, like the same format where like the data isn't that important, right? Um, we use a website that's somewhere else, and we use a computer to really kind of deal with it. And there isn't a whole lot that we print, and it's not a big deal. They were out for about 2 weeks. We had to the whole accounting, everyone. They couldn't do their operation, and they couldn't make money. So I was there. I was one of the technicians. Showed up, and I had to reimage all their computers. And then they had some of them were very basic. I could just it was funny. I had a real small NAS off of a USB, and I shared it across like 5 or 6 computers, and I pulled the image from there and re-imaged it off of a little small little guy. So I got the money's worth off of that thing. But it took about 2 weeks to get them all back in operational, and even then, they were very uh, hesitant, right? Because at the time it was like, well, we don't know if we got rid of everything. We don't know where it's sourced from. We can accidentally open up another file. And at that point, they started putting all security measures in place, like anti-malware, encryption, backups, everything. So that was very, at the time, I didn't know how big of a deal it was because I was at a very, I would say, low level, technical level. We have an incident, respond to it, not from a business side. But like I said, now from a security perspective, I understand how heavy business is. Hey, that was a major driver for them, right? Where they didn't realize the data was important until someone started modifying and locked them out of their own files. It's really important now.
Wow, was that attack like ransomware or what was happening there? Like, why did it
I
happen?
don't remember the detail. I don't think it was. I don't think they wanted anything. I think it just locked it up. I don't remember. I wasn't at a position where I knew the details. But they weren't able to operate. It was just their files were just locked up. It could have been a ransomware, like, hey, send us crypto, but this was back in 2014, 15 for me. I don't remember the details. I remember it was just like I worked 15, 16-hour days, something like that, to try to uh, image all their stations, and I really didn't. I wasn't at the level of knowing of what exactly decision of it or the response. Did it communicate to the hackers or anything like that? I wasn't involved with that.
Interesting. Do you think it's common for companies to think they're more secure than they are?
Say it again.
Do you think that it's common that companies feel like they're more secure than they actually are?
Yeah. So one of the things that um I think understanding or coming up with a solution to confirm what you are saying you're doing is what you actually are doing, right? It is. I think there is definitely a term about this where you. I actually think is a CISSP question. It's like confirming that the logs are actually occurring. Are you actually ingesting the logs or alerts, or are you just, or is there nothing really happening right now? And I think that isn't just a problem with systems themselves. Hey, we're setting up a SIM, we want to grab traffic. Hey, we set up these controls, but we're not 100% sure that they're actually piping through the SIM and triggering the SOAR or whatever actions you have. It's an actual business problem where we're grabbing, example, we have 15 users being onboarded, various different technologies, and we have a role-based access control list. And that's how everyone's being batched, onboarded based off of that. And we write in policy, hey, it's happening every 3 months that we're reviewed. Is it really happening? Is there a control to confirm that what you're saying you're doing is you're actually doing it? Or are you just adding people without having the proper scope of permissions? We have security, we have ACLs in place. Are you monitoring to make sure that when ACLs are being adjusted or opened up or closed, or is there an actual approval process? Because we say we're having it, but are we doing it? And then trusting your staff, right? Sometimes you have staff where they're not as detail oriented as you would like, but they have a detail oriented role, and that comes back into full circle where like you're short of staff, etc., etc. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing for me is that one of the biggest fears and is really the concern is, are you doing what we're saying we're doing, and how can we confirm that from a holistic cybersecurity program?
Interesting. What would you say is one of your biggest challenges right now?
Biggest challenges. So I think one of the biggest challenges is definitely balance. I think that's where the balancing between the technical and the business side, I would say, is that you want to be technical enough to show that you are the person to make this recommendation, right? It's like a doctor, right? You want to be cold, really just give you the facts and tell you how to approach things, so that way you don't want to mix emotions into it. On the other hand, you want the business side and understand the drivers and really concisely communicate with a boardroom or executive leadership that pretty much that this is why we need to do it, and it's something that we need to like with urgency, right? We have organizations. You can have a department full of admin roles, and they're all sales staff, right? And then you're like, hey, this is a very small example. Hey, we need to communicate to all the department heads. Hey, these sales staff impact these other 4 or 5 workflows that impact other departments. We need to start winding down the permissions. It's likely to affect your sales or your onboarding process. Everybody loses their mind, right? It's like, okay, but we can't continue what we're doing now though, because if their accounts are compromised, we lose all this data, or they can manipulate all this data, right? Communicating that in one email that's very concise and very simple and very business mind, that isn't leaning too technical or principle of least privilege, defensive layers, and all these like slogans that cybersecurity community really communicates are really useless in my opinion. You have to keep it in one sentence, bullet points, otherwise you kind of lose the room. And so that's my biggest challenge, right? Like figuring out, continuously adjust the way I communicate, while still maintaining my technical mind, so I can develop an architecture or a program, right, or a workflow.
How do you balance your attention between, on the one hand, communication with management, leadership, explaining your decisions, actually security and making the decisions, and education, like teaching people in the company what they should, what they shouldn't, what a threat looks like?
Um, that's a good question. I think from balancing from all these like the control policies and all that, right? That's pretty much what you're asking. How do you balance between what's most priority and what isn't? I think you start off, and it kind of goes back to originally kind of like the 4-step process, right? It always starts with policy. You have to have it somewhere written down. You have to have and whether, and I think the real question here is that you have all those pieces in place. You have policies, you have sign off, you have all these things, right? And then you as a person, how do you even handle all this work? You can't. The truth is, you can't. I think that's where my takes start becoming a little bit more controversial. I'm completely open to say that it is absolutely ridiculous for one person to do everything, or 2 or 3 people to do everything at a staff of 1,000 staffed organization. Right? You can't. Right? You can do all. You can try to hire as many unicorns that you think, and they will probably pass your exams, your interview exams, but you have to prioritize. And at that point, and then not everyone's good at everything, right? I'm good at networking. Some of the people are even better at networking than I am. There's probably tons of people who are. And then there's other areas. That's nothing like there's just other areas. You can be a software developer really good at AWS, but not good in Azure. What if your organization has 2? You really want that person to do both? Okay, they do both. And then they want them to learn phishing campaigns, how to capture people, and then build policies. These are all different skill sets. So the truth is, you can't. I think you have to focus on what your organization needs. If you want to be successful, you do the quick wins that the organization is really looking for. You have an organization who doesn't have a documentation, right, or policies. We have no policies, and we're telling people what to do, but we have no ability to hold them accountable. Dive into GRC. Right? If you join an organization and we have policies, we have all this stuff, but we just don't know if we're getting all the logs we're supposed to, if we're actually getting alerts, like, because I don't see any of that are happening. Then you're a security engineer building out a SIM and a SOAR, right? I think really kind of picking where the organization needs. If they're hiring for something, they're interviewing you. It's likely they're gonna mention the first pain points to see if you're the right fit. Don't get lost in too much stuff. Don't one day work on email phishing campaigns, and the next day work on policies, and the next day work on pen testing. This is a very time. I guess I don't know how to say it, but it takes a lot out of your time just to learn concepts at a level that is very useful for an organization. Trying to do everything all at once, I think that leads to burnout, right?
Do you see a lot of burnout in the cybersecurity space?
We'll say it again. You cut off a little bit.
Do you see a lot of burnout in the cybersecurity space?
I see a lot of burnout in the tech space. I think that's more accurate. I think as some of these systems become extremely complex, you got organizations with hundreds of thousands of software integrations, APIs, all these things, and you got developers learning cloud and various different types of cloud, on-site infrastructure, security, and then you got security in mind, and God forbid you get hacked, right? And then like, oh, we can't have this happen again. Okay, well, I need a budget. Oh, never mind. So I think that kind of circle, learn new technology, enhance it with very little money being put in, pushes people kind of to not really breaking point, but it's just kind of, I'm tired of doing the wheel, right? I do this thing, it doesn't stop it. I put tape on it, breaks again, put tape on it. So I think that's where I see a lot of it. It's across everything: software development, security, IT, everything.
Interesting. How have you been able to manage that, both for yourself or your team?
So how was that? So I actually read a whole lot of self-help books. When I got into management, read a bunch. Well, I didn't read. I listened to them, right? ADHD. So headphones, just run them through. And during COVID 2020, I listened to a bunch of them. And really, right, understand, remember your why. Um, what you do every day is what you want to do. You have complete control over it. It's not always your fault, but it's your responsibility. If you're burned out, it's likely because you're choosing to do the action that's causing you to be burnt out. If you are mentally exhausted, if you can't really fully think, even if it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I've had staff where I tell them, "Hey, man, just clock out early. Like, just you make it up later. It's likely they already made it up a couple weeks prior because they worked on a Saturday, etc. But hey, just take off early. You're done." I've had staff where I had them cut off half day, right? Because they worked a whole lot the weeks prior leading up to the completion of a project. And like, hey, just take off, you're done. And they won't want to leave, right? They don't want to leave. They want to stay. They want to continue working. But I already know what's going to happen, right? You're not fully conscious of how tired you really are until a month or two later. Then everything happens all at once, right? We're people, right? It's not everyone's self-aware, not everyone's different level of emotional intelligence. And as a leader, I try to constantly have like a thumb on the pulse of the staff, where they're at mentally, what are they doing, how much workload is being put on them. Because it's very easy to say, what is it? Pen testing, vulnerability analysis, access administration, compliance, and policies. And then I want you to do all of that. And then not check in on them for a month and then come back and say, hey, where's all this? And I'm like, oh, this is what I got. And I'm like, this is all you have? And then you do it all over again. You do that for a year, they're going to be burnt out, right? I think it comes from leadership. I think it comes from understanding the work. Some people graduate from a real prestige college. They jump into a CISO or CTO role or a CIO role, and they have no idea what it's like to actually do the work, right? To troubleshoot a network can take 5 minutes or hours, right? Depending on what decision you make. And I think having them knowing how much workload it is, going down there and seeing, okay, like pen to paper, fingers to keyboard, what does this look like to build this workflow? Communicating in a bullet point is easy, but understanding how many hours it takes to do something, it really puts things in perspective, which is like the problem, right? Where the managers don't know, they continue to drive the staff because drivers from the business are saying we need XYZ, and there's not a lot of feedback coming back, or I don't understand why this is taking so long, right? So I think that's the main reason, and how you avoid it really is from management, really understanding, getting managers in leadership. I think I read one of my college essays. Google tried to promote the most technical experts, the most senior developers as leaders, and they found that the ones that were mediocre at developers were actually better leaders because they had more different type of intelligence. They had more emotional intelligence, etc., etc. And then the leaders that were really, really good at the logical stuff had more of a struggle to get their team to accomplish as much as the other team would, just because they're more used to working individually. And not to say if you're technical, you won't be able to do it. It's just you need to be more aware of like, hey, I can't approach the problem of getting my staff to not be burnt out the same way I would approach a problem in building a software, building a network, or whatever, right? Building a cloud infrastructure. Can't approach them the same way.
Wow, that's really interesting. Do you think that's something that most security leaders, CISOs, directors are aware of?
I think they're aware of it. That's a tough question. I mean, I don't think so. Some are, in my opinion. It's really hard for people to be self-aware, right? It's really easy to blame others. That person just wasn't the right fit. This person, whatever. Um, you have to want to build a team, right? You can't always hire, and it's easier. It definitely is easier having an endless budget and hiring a bunch of self-driven staff members, and you could just give them. You do vulnerability analysis, you do access administration, you do compliance, you do governance, you do risk. You just kind of throw all the like individual tasks in the cybersecurity program to one person, and then it all gets done. But that's not the real world, right? You have to build up staff, right? You don't have $250,000 to hire like $250,000 each person, right? They're not going to do that. So you're going to have to figure out how to build staff and kind of build them up and build a culture, a team culture that encourages you to learn, get better, do high quality of work, but also not feel like you're failing every day, which causes burnout. Not an environment that doesn't encourage you to lie to yourself and others about how much experience you have. Just be honest and forefront, and bring up to the forefront, and then we could provide a support system to help you get there. That's it, right? Was it radical candor? And I don't think, and I don't think, and I guess to answer your question directly, I don't think there's not many leaders that really invest their time into doing that.
What would you say is a tip you have for someone who is starting out in cybersecurity and does want to find a place where that is the sort of culture and somewhere that he can really grow in security?
Yeah. So to trying to get in, my advice would be invest in yourself. And a hot take, or not hot take, a controversial take, in my opinion, is don't worry about money for the first 5 years. Just double down on. I was once given advice by a previous CEO that I worked for. He said, go to the place that provides the most experience for you. Don't worry about money. And I held that true for like 5 or 6 years. I was like, it sucks. We're like, oh, I want to get paid more money. And you see all these YouTubers, 150, 180 a year after 2 years and all this stuff. I've selected roles that were specifically allowed me to work on a lot of technology and own a lot of projects. And that's why I pass that on to everyone, is that invest in yourself, go to the places that provide the most education, experience, etc. They allow you to touch more things, because that's what's going to matter at the end of the day. They're in relating to your career growth. If you work at Microsoft and all you touch is like a QA environment in a very small subsection, yeah, you're going to get all these job offers because you worked at Microsoft, right? But when it comes to execution, you're going to fail. In my opinion, this is what I've seen actually on the field. People work from Intel, etc. And I come in and they compare the two, and it's just like, oh, well, he worked from Intel, or she worked from Intel. Okay, cool. And then I get calls about help. Hey, can you help me? Sure. Like, it's fine. But you're not going to get as much reputation, because Google and Microsoft, you're going to have to fight tooth and nail just to get access to stuff. But in smaller companies, you get access to everything, right? And so you couple experience with education, certifications, degrees, whatever you like, whatever you prefer, whatever suits your thing. Really just hit the books and use whatever it is you're learning, especially the first 5 years. CCNA, you want to get your CCNA, great. Grab that, go to a Cisco shop. Or any networking, try to get into Spectrum or these small shops where they have multi-site data centers, etc. If you're if you want to go, OffSec with pen testing, OSCP, okay, great. Now, take any role that will allow you to do offensive penetration testing, or even vulnerability management. Just like take anything you can and try to get projects approved that relate to pen testing. Do a bunch of that for 5 years, and you will see opportunities.
Amazing. What do you think looks different in cybersecurity now versus the way it was 5 years ago?
So cybersecurity specifically, so it became its own thing. I don't know what happened. I really don't know like how that happened. I mean, maybe like I have no idea. Social media, maybe like LinkedIn, or it had to be a driver from the business side where organizations started like branching them out. I think when legal got involved, right, compliances really started getting hit. You started seeing the governance side really ingesting more and more on their side with the risk, vulnerability management. All those things were becoming requirements. So now they're kind of branching out into their own entity. Um, but when I started, and it wasn't too long ago, right? It's 10 years. 2013, it was just IT, and then security was a specialization. And even you even saw it on certs where, and even there's still now certifications is just security specialization, right? AWS security specialist, right? CCNA had a security specialist role, CCNA network security specialist security, and now I think they have their own dedicated security certificate. But back in the day, it was just I saw it as it's an enhancement. You want to do security, you want to do automation, you want to do cloud, but all fundamentals is IT. I think that's the big difference is that they kind of split up, and I don't necessarily agree with it. For example, the DoD, and someone's probably going to correct me, but when I was reading the NIST documentations, you see security administrator and then system administrator. And the security administrator really just hardens it. It could either check or harden the system. The IT keeps it uptime, provides access, etc. Maintenance, all these other things. And there isn't like 1,500 different roles, right? I am, senior pen tester. There isn't all these things, right? Security architect. Like, it's just like, dude, like, this isn't like, we're overcomplicating something, right? And I think that's a huge thing that's happened in the past 10 years from security.
Interesting. Okay, so we're just out of time. First of all, I have one more question. But before that, thank you so much. Like, I loved hearing your perspective, and I love how learning about leadership was so much of your journey. And it shows how you came from this background of, do I even get into working with computers and I wish I could just fix a computer, to being a director of like security in a company is amazing. Um, my last question would be, well, it has two parts. What is one thing that keeps you up as a security professional versus what is one thing that gets you excited about
Yeah,
security?
so that keeps me up at night is really, are we? It goes back to that question, right? Where are we doing what we say we're going to do, or are we doing exactly what we said we are doing, right? Because legal comes into play, like legal compliance, all these things come into play, and really confirming that on a quarterly, monthly basis is what keeps me up. And I'm like, please don't tell me that we're not doing that. And then I'm like, okay, thank God. Okay, cool. It's really, and then when I hear workflows, I'm like, oh, come on. And I ask a question, I'm like, please tell me, no, we're not doing that. I'm okay, cool. Because we said we're not doing that. I don't want us to like be caught, right? So, because in no consequence, right? We communicate, talk, we can have all the meetings in the world, but if the right people aren't in the meetings that we think they're the right people, and we don't get the right information, hey, like we made a mistake, right? And I want to reduce that as much as possible, right? I think that's like the biggest concern for me. Right, we're getting logs. Are we getting logs? Because we're supposed to be getting them, we're getting an alert. We didn't get an alert, so what's going on here, right? Those are all from across the board: workflows, logging, everything. What gets me excited? So I'm really project based work right now, and there's nothing more fulfilling than a 1 year project or a 6 month project coming to like conclusion. I work in compliance. I love seeing a beautiful signed PCI report because it's really nerdy, but it's really a cultivation of a bunch of people getting involved to accomplish the compliance, whether it's gathering it from development, different individual business units regarding their workflow, data management, all these things come into play. Everyone's work throughout the year, whether it's like phishing campaigns, training, reading the handbook, as simple as it is, confirming that, showing that we have historically done the thing like harden the endpoints, we audit endpoints, all these things really just compiled into that report saying, hey, they're compliant, we're good. After being audited for 3 to 6 months is super awesome. Getting a bit, what gets me really excited as well is you got a team of 3 or 4 and we're building a new workflow. We need to start doing this because of whatever reason. And we start kind of piecing everything together until all of a sudden we're doing it without being told, right? Without them telling me something where I need to approve or do something, make a change, or me telling them something that they need to do in action. It's just natural now. And that's super awesome. Sometimes it takes months. Sometimes it's super simple. It takes a couple of days. But sometimes it takes a year to do. And it's super fulfilling.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.